The air in the lawyer's office was thick with the scent of old paper and stale grief. I, Liam, sat on a leather chair that felt far too expensive for me, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Opposite me, my brother Jake slouched, already looking bored. My adoptive mother, Eleanor, sat beside me, a fragile statue carved from sorrow. We were here for the reading of my father's will. Richard Sterling, the man who took me in as an orphan, who provided for me, who built a tech empire from nothing, was gone. And despite the comfortable life he'd given me, I had always felt like a guest in his house, a project he'd taken on out of charity, not love, a perpetual outsider. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Davies with eyes as cold as polished stone, cleared his throat. "To my son Jake," he began, his voice droning, "I bequeath my entire controlling stake in Sterling Innovations, my portfolio of properties, and the entirety of my liquid assets." A gasp escaped my mother. Jake, for the first time, sat up straight, a wolfish grin spreading across his face. The number that followed was staggering, a figure with so many zeros it felt unreal. $50 million, an empire, handed to a son who had treated it like his personal playground, a son who had never worked a day in his life. My heart sank, but it wasn't surprise. It was the cold, familiar confirmation of what I'd always known. I was the responsible one, the one who worked late, the one who tried to earn Richard's approval. Jake was the blood son. That was the only thing that ever mattered. Mr. Davies adjusted his glasses, his gaze flicking to me for a brief, dismissive moment. "And to my adopted son, Liam," he continued, the words feeling like an afterthought, "I leave the contents of the small mahogany box currently on my desk, and the key to open it." He slid a small, antique wooden box across the polished table. It was old, beautifully carved, but small enough to hold with one hand. Beside it, he placed a single ornate silver key. I stared at it. That was it. My 20 years of loyalty, of trying to be the perfect son, was worth a small, empty-looking box. Jake snorted, a sharp, ugly sound. "Guess that's what you get for being the charity case, eh, Liam?" My mother shot him a look, her eyes flashing with a fire I hadn't seen in weeks. "Jake, that's enough." I ignored him. I picked up the box. It was surprisingly heavy. I then picked up the key. Its intricate design felt cold against my skin. A strange sense of finality washed over me. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a message, a final stamp on my status in this family. As we stood to leave, my mother placed a trembling hand on my arm. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw not just grief, but a deep, terrifying fear. "Be careful with that, Liam," she whispered, her voice so low I barely heard it. Her gaze darted towards the box. "Some things are better left unopened." That night I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights twinkling below like a galaxy of indifferent stars. The box sat on my coffee table, a silent testament to my father's final judgment. I picked up the silver key, my hand steady. I didn't care what my mother said. I needed to know. I needed to see what final insult lay inside. I inserted the key into the lock. It slid in smoothly. I turned it. Nothing happened. It wouldn't turn. I tried again, jiggling it, pushing it harder. It was useless. The key didn't fit. A cold dread, colder than the lawyer's stare, washed over me. This wasn't just an insult. It was a puzzle, a cruel, final game. And I, holding a key that didn't fit and a box I couldn't open, was the only one playing. I looked from the useless key to the locked box, and a new feeling began to burn through the hurt, determination. Richard had left me a riddle, and I would solve it no matter what truth it unlocked. For 2 days, the mahogany box became my obsession. It sat on my table, a silent mockery of my life's work. I ran my fingers over the intricate carvings, searched for a hidden latch, a false bottom, anything. The key remained stubbornly alien to the lock. It was a mismatch, a deliberate, cruel joke. Was the whole point just to give me a puzzle I could never solve, to leave me with a final, tangible symbol of my otherness? The thought was a bitter pill to swallow. I couldn't accept it. Richard, for all his coldness, was a man of logic and precision. This wasn't chaos, it was a carefully constructed message. On the 3rd day, I took the key to an old locksmith in a dusty downtown alley, a man named Elias who specialized in antique mechanisms. He turned the silver key over in his gnarled fingers, peering at it through a jeweler's loupe. "Magnificent work," he rasped, his voice like gravel. "Custom made. The warding is unique." He glanced at the photo I'd taken of the box's lock. But this key was never meant for that box. They're from different eras, different craftsmen entirely. It's like trying to start a Ferrari with a key for a Ford Model T. He pointed to a tiny, almost invisible mark at the base of the key's head. See that? A griffin. That's the maker's mark of Alistair Finch, a master craftsman who retired 20 years ago. He only made keys for private safes and security deposit boxes. Very high-end. A security deposit box. The thought sent a jolt through me. A secret box, a secret key. This was more than an insult, it was a breadcrumb. I paid Elias for his time and left, my mind racing. I needed to talk to my mother. Her fear at the lawyer's office wasn't just about my feelings being hurt. It was real, visceral terror. I drove to the Grand Sterling estate, the house that was now Jake's. Eleanor met me at the door, her face a mask of anxiety. We sat in the formal living room, the air thick with unspoken words. "Mom," I started, my voice gentle but firm. "The key doesn't fit the box. You knew, didn't you? When you told me to be careful, what did you mean?" She wrung her hands, her eyes darting around the room as if the walls were listening. "Liam, please," she whispered. "Your father, he did things his own way. He made me promise not to interfere. He said what he was doing was for your own protection." Protection? How was leaving me a locked box and a useless key protecting me? Before I could press her further, the front door slammed open. Jake stumbled in, reeking of expensive whiskey. His eyes, bloodshot and arrogant, landed on me. Well, look what the cat dragged in," he sneered, swaggering over to us. "Still trying to figure out your pathetic little inheritance? Give it here. Maybe it's got a gold coin in it. Enough to buy you a bus ticket out of my life." He lunged for the box on the table between me and my mother. I shot to my feet, placing myself between him and it. "Don't touch it, Jake." For a second, he looked surprised by my forcefulness. Then his face contorted with rage. "This is my house now, little orphan. Everything in it is mine." Eleanor stood up, her voice trembling but sharp. "Jake, that's enough. Go to your room." He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Or what, Mommy? You gonna cut me off? Too late for that." He gave me one last shove, more for show than anything, before turning and stomping up the grand staircase. "You'll regret this, Liam. You'll always be nothing." The confrontation left me shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline. His words, meant to wound me, had the opposite effect. They ignited a fire. I wasn't nothing, and I would prove it. I drove back to my apartment, the image of my mother's terrified face and Jake's entitled rage burning in my mind. Under the bright light of my desk lamp, I examined the key again, turning it over and over. Elias had spotted the griffin, but my own frantic examination had missed something else. My heart hammered against my ribs. There, on the shaft of the key, almost worn away by time, was another engraving. It was microscopic, a series of numbers and letters etched with painstaking precision. I grabbed a magnifying glass. The code was faint, but unmistakable. LVR7S4W12. It wasn't a bank account number or a safe combination. It was a code I recognized instantly. Richard had a system for everything, including the massive private library at the estate. It was his cataloging system. Leviticus, row 7, shelf 4, word 12. Richard wasn't a religious man. He named the sections of his library after the books he most respected. Leviticus wasn't the biblical text, it was the section on law and contracts. My father hadn't left me a key to a bank. He'd left me a key to a word, a single word, hidden in a book, in a library that was now in the heart of enemy territory. And the mahogany box? It wasn't the inheritance, it was the lock. I just had to find what it was meant to contain. Returning to the Sterling estate felt like infiltrating a hostile fortress. Jake's presence lingered in the air like a foul odor. I chose a time I knew he'd be out, midday, his usual business lunch that was more about champagne than commerce. My mother let me in, her hands trembling as she handed me the key to the library. "Please, Liam, be quick," she pleaded, her eyes wide with a fear that seemed to go beyond just getting caught by Jake. "He's become unpredictable. The money has made him worse." I gave her a reassuring nod I didn't feel and slipped into the cavernous library. The room smelled of leather and dust, a sanctuary of knowledge that now felt like a crypt. Sunlight streamed through the tall arched windows, illuminating dancing motes of dust. The silence was absolute. I found the Leviticus section, a wall of somber, leather-bound tomes on corporate law and ethics. A bitter irony, considering Richard's final act. Row 7, shelf 4. My fingers traced the spines of the books until I found the right one. It was an old, unremarkable book on contract law. I pulled it from the shelf, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I flipped through the pages, my breath held tight in my chest. I counted the words, my fingers shaking slightly, and there it was. Word 12. It wasn't circled or marked in any way, but the word itself leaped off the page as if it were written in fire. Eleanor. My mother's name. A wave of confusion washed over me. What did it mean? Was this another dead end, another sentimental but ultimately useless gesture? Disappointment was a familiar bitter taste in my mouth. I slumped into Richard's enormous leather armchair, the book lying open in my lap. Eleanor. Why her name? My gaze drifted across the room and landed on the grand fireplace. Above it, where a family portrait should have been, was a large abstract oil painting, a chaotic swirl of blues and grays that Richard had always loved. Eleanor had always hated it, saying it felt cold. As I stared at the painting, a memory surfaced. Years ago, I had walked into the library and found Richard standing on a small stepladder, fiddling with the painting's frame. He'd seemed startled, almost guilty, and quickly said he was just adjusting it. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Now the memory seemed significant. Driven by a sudden electric impulse, I got up and examined the painting. The heavy, ornate frame was solid oak. I ran my hands along the edges, pressing, pushing, and then my fingers found it. A tiny, almost imperceptible seam on the right side. My pulse quickened. I pushed harder, and a section of the frame clicked and swung outward, revealing a hidden compartment carved into the wall behind it. It was a wall safe, a very old, very secure one. My eyes flew to the dial, and then to the small, ornate keyhole beneath it. It was a perfect match for the mahogany box. This was it. The box wasn't the container. It was the keyhole. It was a custom-built lock mechanism that Richard had disguised as a worthless keepsake. My mind was reeling. He had built a puzzle of incredible complexity, a series of nesting dolls designed to be opened only by me. I raced back to my apartment, my mind a whirlwind of possibilities. The box, the real key, my mother's name, it all had to fit together. Back in my apartment, I examined the mahogany box with new eyes. The keyhole was real. But what was the combination for the safe? I thought back to the word from the book. Eleanor. It wasn't just a name, it was the combination. I rushed back to the estate, the box clutched in my hands like a holy relic. This time, I didn't bother being quiet. I strode into the library, my mother trailing behind me, her face a mixture of terror and dawning realization. I went straight to the painting, opened the hidden compartment, and faced the safe. With trembling hands, I inserted the mahogany box into the recessed keyhole. It clicked into place perfectly. A lock for a lock. Then I began to turn the dial. Eleanor. I spelled out her name, using the corresponding numbers on the dial. With a final turn on the R, there was a deep, resonant thunk. The safe was unlocked. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I took a deep breath and pulled the heavy steel door open. Inside, there was no money, no gold, no jewels. There was only a single, thick manila envelope and a small, handheld digital audio recorder. I picked up the envelope. My name, Liam, was written on the front in Richard's sharp, familiar handwriting. My hand shaking, I opened the flap and pulled out the contents. It was a birth certificate, my original birth certificate, and the name listed under Mother was Eleanor Sterling. The name under Father was Richard Sterling. A dizzying, nauseating vertigo swept over me. I wasn't adopted. I was their son, their secret, hidden son. All these years, all the lies, why? As that question screamed in my mind, my eyes fell to the audio recorder. Richard had left me one final thing, an explanation. The world tilted on its axis. The silent library, once a place of comfort, now felt like a courtroom where my entire life was on trial. My birth certificate was clutched in my hand, the paper a flimsy, impossible truth. I looked at Eleanor, but it wasn't my mother I saw. It was a stranger, a woman who had let me live as an outsider in my own home, who had watched me yearn for the love that was mine by right. Her face was ashen, tears streaming down her cheeks, but I felt no sympathy, only a vast, cold emptiness. Why? The word was a raw whisper, torn from my throat. Why would you do this to me? Before she could answer, before she could weave another lie, I snatched the audio recorder from the safe. My thumb found the play button. Richard's voice, a voice I had tried so hard to please, filled the room, ghostly and clear. "Liam," it began, devoid of its usual coldness, replaced by a weary resignation. "If you are hearing this, then you have solved the puzzle I laid for you, and it means I am gone, and the truth can no longer be hidden. I am sorry, my son, for everything." The word son hit me like a physical blow. "When you were born," the voice continued, "Eleanor, she suffered from a severe postpartum depression, one that twisted into a dangerous psychosis. The doctors warned me she was a threat to you. She tried to harm you, Liam, more than once. She saw you not as our child, but as an intruder, a thing that had ruined her life. The only way to keep you safe was to make you a stranger. We faked an adoption. We brought you into our home as the orphan, so I could watch over you, protect you, without triggering her illness. It was a devil's bargain, and my greatest failure. I loved you, Liam. In my own broken way, I loved you. But I was a coward. I was terrified of losing her, and so I sacrificed your childhood to keep our fragile peace." The recording clicked off, leaving a silence more profound than any sound. The air crackled with the horrifying truth. My mother, the gentle, fragile woman I knew, had tried to kill me. Her fear wasn't for me, but of me. Her whispers to be careful were not warnings about a box, but a desperate plea for her own secret to remain buried. I turned to look at her, really look at her, and saw it all. The carefully constructed fragility, the years of feigned affection. It was all a performance, a lie to cover a monstrous truth. At that moment, the library doors burst open. Jake stood there, his face purple with rage. "What the hell is going on in here?" he roared. "I came back and found Mom babbling about you in the library. What did you do?" His eyes landed on the open safe, the birth certificate in my hand. He strode forward, snatching the paper from my grasp. He read it, his expression shifting from anger to stunned disbelief, and then to a sneering, ugly triumph. "So," he spat, a cruel smile twisting his lips, "the little charity case is a bastard after all. A dirty little secret Mom and Dad tried to hide. No wonder he left you nothing but a box of junk. You were his shame." He was baiting me, trying to provoke me, but his words had no power over me anymore. The small injustices of my life paled in comparison to the cataclysmic lie I had just uncovered. But as he spoke, my eyes caught a detail on the birth certificate that my shocked mind had overlooked. The date. I was born on October 12th. Jake's birthday was August 5th of the same year. We were born less than 3 months apart. It was impossible, unless the puzzle pieces slammed into place with dizzying speed. Richard's coldness towards me wasn't just an act to protect me from Eleanor, it was guilt. Eleanor's over-the-top affection for Jake wasn't just maternal love, it was compensation. "He's not my brother, is he?" I said, my voice eerily calm. My gaze was fixed on Eleanor, pinning her in place. "Jake isn't Richard's son." Eleanor flinched as if struck. The color drained from her face. Jake whirled on her. "What is he talking about, Mom? Tell him he's crazy." But she couldn't speak. She could only stare at me, her mask finally shattered, revealing the terrified woman beneath. The truth was a contagion, and now it had spread. Jake wasn't the rightful heir. He was the product of an affair. And I was the true-born son, the one who had been cast aside, hidden in plain sight to protect the family's darkest secret. The $50 million, the empire, the name, it was all mine. And Jake, the golden child, was the real imposter. In his hand, he held not my shame, but the proof of his own illegitimacy. The silence in the library was a living thing, heavy and suffocating. Jake stared at the birth certificate, then at Eleanor's crumbling facade, his mind struggling to connect the dots. The swaggering arrogance that defined him seemed to evaporate, replaced by a dawning animal-like panic. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "It's a fake. It's a lie. Dad loved me." "Did he?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence like ice. "Or did he just tolerate you for her sake?" I pointed at Eleanor, who now looked like a ghost haunting the ruins of her own life. "All those years, Jake, all the times he ignored your failures, paid off your debts, looked the other way, was it love, or was it the price of her silence?" Every word was a hammer blow, dismantling the reality Jake had built his life upon. He was not the prince, he was the ransom. My gaze shifted back to Eleanor. "The will," I said, a cold realization settling in. "Richard knew he was dying. He structured it this way on purpose. He left Jake everything because he knew that if I was the son he thought I was, clever, determined, and wronged, I would never let it stand. He didn't leave me a box. He left me a weapon, a test, and he left the final choice to me. Jake finally snapped. With a wild cry of rage and denial, he lunged, not at me, but at the safe. "There has to be more," he screamed, his hands scrabbling inside. "Another will, something." He found nothing. The safe was empty, except for the echo of a dead man's confession. Defeated, he slumped against the wall, the birth certificate fluttering from his fingers to the floor. That was when I made my decision. I walked over and picked up the audio recorder. I looked at my mother, her face a canvas of despair. I looked at Jake, a broken man-child who had just lost the only identity he'd ever had, and I felt nothing. No pity, no thirst for revenge, only a profound, cleansing emptiness. "I am the sole legal heir to Richard Sterling's estate," I stated, my voice ringing with an authority I had never felt before. "The will is invalid. It was based on a fraudulent premise that Jake was his sole legitimate child. The birth certificate and the recording are undeniable proof." I turned to Eleanor. "You will leave this house, tonight. You will take nothing with you but the clothes on your back. You'll have no access to the Sterling fortune. You will live the rest of your life as the stranger you made me." She let out a choked sob, but didn't argue. Her fight was over. Then I faced Jake. "And you," I said, my voice dropping, "you can stay, you can live in this house, you can have an allowance, enough to live comfortably, but you will work. For the first time in your life, you will have a job. You will report to me at Sterling Innovations Monday morning at 8 a.m. You will be my assistant. You will fetch my coffee. You will schedule my meetings. You will do every menial task I ask of you. You will spend every day watching me run the company that you thought was yours. This is not a punishment, Jake. It's your new reality, the life you stole from me." His head snapped up, a flicker of his old defiance in his eyes. "I'll never work for you." "You will," I said calmly, "because the alternative is nothing. No house, no money, no name. I will expose the truth, and every door in this city will be slammed in your face. You will be a pariah. The choice is yours, a gilded cage or the gutter." The fight went out of his eyes, replaced by the hollow look of surrender. He knew I had him. I had won. But it wasn't a victory that brought joy. It was simply order restored. I left them there, two ghosts in a library of lies. I walked out of the grand house, not looking back. The weight of being an outsider, a burden I had carried for 20 years, was finally gone. I was not the charity case, I was not the shame, I was Liam Sterling, and my real life was just beginning. A few weeks later, I sat in my office on the top floor of the Sterling Innovations building, the city spreading out below me. The mahogany box sat on the corner of my desk, a reminder not of an insult, but of a father's convoluted, tragic love. The silver key lay beside it. I had found its true purpose. It didn't open the box. It unlocked the truth. At 8 a.m. sharp, there was a soft knock on my door. Jake entered, holding a tray with a single cup of coffee, his face a mask of bitter resentment. "Your coffee, sir," he mumbled. I looked at him, the former king now a court jester, and felt the first faint flicker of something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not pity, peace. The whispers of the past had finally fallen silent.